Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Susan Ilian. Former U.S. President Donald Trump has lashed out at New York prosecutor Alvin Bragg for bringing criminal charges against him and declared himself a victim of election interference. Mr. Trump was speaking at Mar-a-Lago after he pleaded not guilty in a Manhattan court to 34 felony counts of falsifying business records as prosecutors accused him of orchestrating payments to two women before the 2016 election. The 76-year-old reached deep into his well of personal grievances to declare himself hounded by political opponents, using the legal system against him to try to stop him from winning back the White House in 2024.
We have to save our country. God bless you all. God bless you all. And I never thought anything like this could happen in America. Never thought it could happen. The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it. This fake case was brought only to interfere with the upcoming 2024 election, and it should be dropped immediately. Our elections were like those of a third world country, and now this massive election interference at a scale never seen before in our country, beginning with the radical left, George Soros-backed prosecutor Alvin Bragg of New York, who campaigned on the fact that he would get President Trump. I'm going to get him. I'm going to get him. This is a guy campaigning. He wanted to get President Trump at any cost, and this before he knew anything about me, didn't know a thing about me. He was campaigning. As it turns out, virtually everybody that has looked at this case, including rhinos and even hardcore Democrats, say there is no crime and that it should never have been brought. They attacked me with an onslaught of fraudulent investigations. Russia, Russia, Russia. Ukraine, Ukraine, Ukraine. Impeachment hoax number one. Impeachment hoax number two. The illegal and unconstitutional raid on Mar-a-Lago right here. But now they have really stepped up their efforts by indicting the 45th president of the United States, who received $75 million votes, which is more than any sitting president in the history of our country. And in the wings, they've got a local racist Democrat district attorney in Atlanta who is doing everything in her power to indict me over an absolutely perfect phone call, even more perfect than the one I made with the president of Ukraine. Remember, I kid? Everybody's done. In fact, Hillary Clinton got rid of 33,000 emails, and that was okay. But nobody's done it like Joe Biden. This lunatic special prosecutor named Jack Smith, I wonder what it was prior to a change, who others of his ilk say he is even worse than they are, is only looking at Trump, yet Joe Biden took massive amounts more documents. And this is where we are right now. I have a Trump-hating judge with a Trump-hating wife and family whose daughter worked for Kamala Harris and now receives money from the Biden-Harris campaign, and a lot of it. Incredibly, we are now a failing nation. We are a nation in decline. And now these radical left lunatics want to interfere with our elections by using law enforcement. We can't let that happen. With all of this being said, and with a very dark cloud over our beloved country, I have no doubt, nevertheless, that we will make America great again. Thank you very much. And God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump had a substantial victory in another court 3,000 miles away from his New York legal drama. The Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals sided with Trump in his effort to recoup additional legal fees from adult film star Stormy Daniels, who had filed and lost a defamation suit against the former president. Daniels was ordered to pay Trump's attorneys just over $120,000 in legal fees. That's on top of over $500,000 in court-ordered payments to Trump's attorneys she's already been ordered to pay. Now, the civil litigation is officially unrelated to Trump's arrest and charges filed against him in New York, although both involved Daniels, who was paid $130,000 in hush money during the 2016 presidential campaign to keep quiet about an affair. Trump denies the affair. And Johanna LeBlanc, national security law and foreign policy expert, joins me now from D.C. Johanna, welcome to the program. Thanks for being here. Now, we just listened to former U.S. President Trump give a speech at his Mar-a-Lago residence, which covered a broad range of issues, but it appears he directly avoided to address his indictment.
Well, I think it was a great strategy on his part, right? I think that he's trying to not focus on the legal aspect of it, but focus more on the political aspect of it, which is what he talked about. And this case has two fronts, right? You have the legal and you have the political. And some of us, I myself as a trained lawyer, even though criminal law is not my area of expertise, when I went through the indictment, because there are 34 counts, and most of them, well, all of them stem from personal conduct. And you have, you have Stormy Daniels, and then you have another woman, and then you have the doorman who indicated that Mr. Trump had fathered a child and was paid. Now the question is, it's not that he paid hush money to those individuals, in particular Stormy Daniels. The question is, was the payment made in violation of FEC, federal campaign laws, right? And was it made with the intent of influencing the 2016 presidential elections? So it's not about an adult having consensual sexual relations with another adult. It's about whether or not the law was broken under federal elections campaign laws.
Well, now that the former President Trump pleaded not guilty to all the 34 felony counts, what's the next thing in line for Mr. Trump?
Well, it was expected for him to have pled not guilty, obviously, but I anticipate that the next move from his counsel will be to file a motion to dismiss, essentially saying that, Your Honor, these claims are baseless. They have no merits. In fact, you have countless legal scholars here in America that have said, upon looking at the statement of facts and the indictment, it's not really a strong case. I think the case in Georgia would have been a little bit more stronger. So I think from a political perspective, because the case appears to be weak, the cases appear to be weak, and they arise out of personal conduct. I think that it's going to galvanize his base even more and show that this is a political witch hunt. But if the state of Georgia proceeds with its criminal case against Mr. Trump and were to have an indictment, then I think we'll have a different conversation. But as it stands right now, I think, again, defense will file a motion to dismiss. And then from there will be a number of motions filed up until the presidential election, because the goal will be to string along this case as much as you can up until the 2024 elections. And for Mr. Trump to use this as a way to gain more money, to raise more money, as we saw from the date that he was indicted up into the day that he was actually arrested, Mr. Trump had raised approximately $8 million. So, and his ratings had actually increased in the pollings in terms of his popularity within the Republican Party. So to a certain extent, this is working for him from a political perspective.
Now, this case has highlighted deep political divisions in the U.S. What's Mr. Trump's political future looking like?
I think Mr. Trump will continue to run for the presidency, and we will see if the Republican Party will name him the actual nominee. We know that he's probably going to have a contender in the state of Florida, Governor DeSantis, who who is loved within the Republican Party due to his radical policies in the state of Florida that he has put in place. But I think this is working for Mr. Trump because he's able to show to his base, look, they're after me. If they're after me, they're also after you. But another element that we have to look at is that where are we going to find an impartial jury for this case? Everyone knows Trump, right? It's going to be incredibly difficult for prosecution to find members of the community to serve as jury members who don't have an opinion when it comes to this case. I mean, everywhere you go, everyone knows about Trump, even, all across the world. He's one of the most and so an incredibly famous person, very well known. So that's going to be a challenge that the prosecution will face. But I think his defense team could use that as leverage to drag this case.
And, Johanna, what are some of the reactions from different parties, Republicans and Democrats? People are quite opinionated about Trump.
Yes, people are incredibly opinionated, and you can feel it in Washington. It's very tense, regardless of where you stand on the issue, or whether it be the legal issue or the political issue. You can sense that the sensitivity around Mr. Trump's arrest and indictment. But you have Congresswoman Marjorie Greene Taylor, who actually went to New York in support of Mr. Trump. You have the Speaker of the House, who's a Republican, who put out a statement in support of Mr. Trump, indicating that this is a complete witch hunt and that Congress will utilize its authority to get to the bottom of this, and that they believe Mr. Bragg, who is the district attorney in this case, is using this as a political tool. So the Republican Party, many of them, even those who may not always see eye to eye with Trump, are actually questioning the validity of this legal case, and they are gravely concerned within the Republican Party. But the Democratic Party, on the other hand, it's a good day for Democrats in Washington and across America to see that Trump is finally held accountable for his activities. But I think that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and those who support this legal action need to be cautioned, because now you've opened the door, right, for future presidents. You have set the precedent. While a lot of us would like to see, a lot of people would like to see President Trump being held accountable, but I think the case should be a little bit stronger if you are to indict and ultimately convict the president of the United States. Because if there's no conviction, it's going to look like a complete witch hunt, and it's going to minimize the credibility of the Democratic Party. And
no one really seems to be talking about Stormy Daniels in all of this controversy. She hasn't really been put too much in the spotlight. We know that the Court of Appeals ordered her to pay Trump $120,000 in legal fees. What other reactions have there been from her, from the public towards her?
Well, I think from a strategy standpoint, this is good for Mr. Trump. Because he can spin it and say, you see, whenever they come after me, I always win because they have nothing on me, right? And we've seen time and time again, Trump has been investigated and has always walked out free, even though when everyone around him is going to jail, including his former lawyer, Michael Cohen, who spent 3 years in prison, right? So this is a victory. And it happened on the same day that he was arrested, that he went to turn himself in. So it's a major victory for Mr. Trump and his legal team, because again, it shows that they're after me, but they will never win, and that this is indeed a political witch hunt.
Johanna LeBlanc, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, the husband of Scotland's former First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, has been arrested as part of a police investigation into the finances of their Scottish National Party. 58-year-old Peter Murrell was the Scottish National Party's chief executive until he quit last month. In a statement, Police Scotland said they had taken Murrell into custody for questioning over the party's funding and finances. The police investigation is looking at what happened to more than £600,000 raised by Scottish independence campaigners in 2017, which was supposed to have been ring-fenced for spending on that issue, but was missing from the party's filed accounts. Morell, who had run the SNP for more than 2 decades, resigned last month after accepting blame for misleading the public about a plunge in the number of party members. His wife, Sturgeon, also stood down as the leader of Scotland's semi-autonomous government last month after 8 years in power, saying she had become too divisive to lead the nation to independence. Meanwhile, Scotland's First Minister, Humza Yousaf, said the news of the husband of his predecessor, Nicola Sturgeon, being arrested was challenging, but declined to comment on the live police investigation. Yousaf said he wanted to reassure Scottish National Party members on the issue of transparency and party finances.
I was told this morning after the event, and of course my reaction, as you'd imagine, much like anybody involved in the SNP, is that this is a difficult day for the party. But again, I just reiterate and emphasise it's so important for me not to comment on a live police investigation and be seen to prejudice that in any way, shape or form. Now, of course, the police investigation and the news this morning is challenging, is difficult. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but the reason I'm here is to focus on the priorities of the day and the priorities of the Scottish people at large. I believe Nicola Sturgeon absolutely that she had taken the party as further forward as she possibly could. I think anybody who has particularly seen Nicola through the COVID pandemic could really sympathise with just how exhausted she absolutely was. And that's why in my first meeting as leader of the NEC on Saturday was to get the NEC to agree to a course of action around governance, around transparency, with some external input. I think that external input is going to be really important because people do have questions about the party, about transparency, about our finances. And I think we have to reassure our own party membership as well as the broader Scottish public.
In the meantime, a man who kidnapped a 4-year-old girl in Western Australia and held her captive for 18 days has been sentenced to more than 13 years in prison in a case that gripped the country. According to the court transcript, 37-year-old Terence Kelly, who pleaded guilty, abducted the 4-year-old Cleo Smith, who was sleeping in a remote campsite in the early hours of October 16, 2021. He drove her 75 kilometers to his house, where he kept her locked in a bedroom. Smith was rescued on November 3rd after an extensive search led by police and involving land and air crews, roadblocks, and CCTV footage. Kelly, a member of Australia's Indigenous or Aboriginal community, will be eligible for parole in 11 years and 6 months. Well, it's goodbye from former New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern as she delivers an emotional final address to Parliament. She thanked family supporters and her party for a career that included leading through the COVID pandemic and the Christchurch terror attacks. Ardern stepped down as Prime Minister in January, saying she had no more in the tank to lead the country and would also not seek re-election to Parliament.
But despite that, I've become used to my time as Prime Minister being distilled down into a different list. A domestic terror attack, a volcanic eruption, a pandemic. A series of events where I found myself in people's lives during their most grief-stricken or traumatic moments. Their stories and phases remain etched in my mind and likely will forever. That is the responsibility and privilege of the role of Prime Minister. A role I never thought I was meant to have. It's fair to say that 2017 involved a surprising chain of events. I've long said that I started in the Labour Party as a volunteer delivering flyers, and that's where I will return happily. I was a warrior. I anticipated that everything that could go wrong would. Some might say the worst possible character trait to have as a politician, or the best, depending on how you cut it. While I convince myself that you cannot be a warrior and be in this place, you can. You can be that person and you can be here. I'm sensitive, or as Maggie Barry once called me, a precious petal. Now, I cannot determine what will define my time in this place, but I do hope I've demonstrated something else entirely, that you can be anxious, sensitive, kind, and wear your heart on your sleeve. You can be a mother or not. You can be an ex-Mormon or not. You can be a nerd, a crier, a hugger. You can be all of these things. And not only can you be here, you can lead just like me. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
And staying with politics, Brandon Johnson has been elected Chicago mayor, defeating Paul Vallis in a runoff between two Democrats to take over a city grappling with crime, an issue that dominated the race. Johnson, a 47-year-old Cook County commissioner, becomes the 57th mayor of the third largest U.S. city after incumbent Lori Lightfoot was eliminated from the race in February.
Has always been about building a better, stronger, safer Chicago for all the people of Chicago. I also always like to teach in Cabrini Green, where my students can see one of the wealthiest neighborhoods from their back window, but out of their front windows, bulldozers staring them down, preparing to destroy their public housing. Today, we take big steps towards figuring it out here. So I believe since we are taking steps to figure it out here, let's take this bold, progressive movement around these United States of America.
Israeli police have attacked and arrested Palestinian worshippers in a violent dawn raid on the Al-Aqsa mosque compound in occupied East Jerusalem. At least 400 Palestinians were arrested and remain in Israeli custody. According to Palestinian officials, they are being held at a police station in Ardern in occupied East Jerusalem. Israeli police said in a statement that it was forced to enter the compound after masked agitators locked themselves inside the mosque with fireworks, sticks, and stones. Violence in the occupied West Bank and Jerusalem has surged over the past year, and there is concern that tensions could escalate this month, when the Muslim holy month of Ramadan coincides with Judaism's Passover and Christian Easter. Welcome back. Buckingham Palace has released the artwork of the invitation for the King's coronation on May the 6th. The artwork, designed by heraldic artist Andrew Jamieson, was hand-painted in watercolor and gouache and features a motif of the Green Man, an ancient figure from British folklore. Flowers on the invitation, which will be made from recycled card and will appear in groupings of 3. A nod to the king being the monarch to be called Charles, and it will also feature a lion, a unicorn, and a boar, taken from the royal couple's coats of arms. It will be sent out more than 2,000 coronation guests. In addition to the invitation design, the palace also released a new portrait of King Charles and Camilla, the Queen Consort, and announced the 8 pages of honor who will attend the head royals during the coronation service. Roughly 1 in 6 people worldwide are affected by infertility in their lifetime. That's according to news reports published by the World Health Organization. Infertility is a disease of the male or female reproductive system defined by the failure to achieve a pregnancy after 12 months or more of regular, unprotectable sexual intimacy. It can cause significant distress, stigma, and financial hardship, affecting people's mental and psychosocial well-being.
The key findings of the report show that 1 in 6 people are infertile over a period of a lifetime. That is a significant number. So the sheer magnitude of the numbers of infertile couples mean that there is a great demand for infertility care, for diagnosis and treatment. Because it is not well recognized, the services are often not available, which means that those who try to seek care end up in catastrophic expenditure within the health services, even if the services are available. They are unaffordable for a lot of people. Infertility has not had much attention globally, and this is largely because there has been, in the population discussions, there has been much more of a focus on contraception rather than infertility. And so it just has not been prioritized. And the report shows just how critical the question is and just how critical the need is. 1 in 6 is a lot of people. This is just the beginning of this work. What WHO needs is a baseline on which we can begin to develop more evidence for the area of work, to begin to make sure that the services are available. And so this is an opportunity for us to determine or to demonstrate the importance of the issue. And also, for your anticipation, there will be a report that is the first guidelines that are developed for the area of infertility care.
And finally on the program, a goldsmith in Cambodia whose goal is to promote peace is using what he has to make this happen, which perhaps means collecting bullet casings and transforming them into beautiful jewelry pieces. The casing deemed safe for use are melted and poured into molds, and the metal are turned into bracelets, earrings, and rings. Let's take a look.
In a small workshop in the Cambodian capital, goldsmith Thoin Chanta sifts through piles of bullet casings, which he will turn into jewelry. Upcycling something which is used in war into something beautiful and peaceful is a commitment Chanta made for himself in memory of his father, who died during the ultra-Maoist Khmer Rouge regime between 1975 and 1979, and the civil war that continued on for another 2 decades.
The purpose of making this jewelry is that, firstly, because I'm a victim of the war as a Cambodian who lost family members from it, and now the world is at war again. I make this to show that the world doesn't want war, separation, and we all want peace. Secondly, it helps create jobs in the community.
The bullets of mainly AK-47 and M16S are collected from the shooting range around town, as well as from various military training grounds. His signature design is that of the rumdo flower. The fragrant bloom is a symbol of Cambodian culture. His workshop goes through an average of 5 kilograms of bullet casings per week and produces around 20 items per day of what is known as anchor bullet jewelry.
During the war, we had to run away from bullets and were in fear all the time. We didn't know when we might die. I turned these bullet shells into jewelry to say that I don't want this terrible situation to return. I want this jewelry made from bullet shells to be a symbol of peace. We remembered what we have lost and we don't want it to happen again.
Since gold was expensive, Chanta started turning bullet casings into shiny gold-colored items and sold them next to gold jewelry at a cheaper price.
Jewelry made from bullet shells are no different from those made of other materials like gold or silver. We can shape them into bracelets or necklaces to fit men and women, or we can even make them into whatever designs the customers want.
His creations have had some traction from overseas and he exports some of his work, but he mostly sells his creations at local, flair and other markets. The pieces cost between $5 to $20 depending on the design and work involved.
And that's The World Today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Susan Ilian.